Hello, Marcus Darden here. Got a small proposition I'd like to share with you. It has to do with how our elementary school is going to work during this next academic year. As we come into this academic year 2021, there's going to be four major components. The first is a Common Core curriculum that's mandated by the state, and every school that has certification through the state has to have a Common Core curriculum. We'll need a teacher that's going to be working with our students in some capacity. There's going to be homework and schoolwork, or some combination of both, since we won't be actually working at school. We'll be at home the whole time. And there's lastly the daycare bit, which is how our students are going to be managed during the day. The default version is the Ann Arbor Public Schools option. That's why we moved into the city. That's why we moved into this neighborhood, to get our Ann Arbor Public School, King Elementary. So the four elements given to us through Ann Arbor Public Schools this year looks like it's going to be the Ann Arbor Public School version of the Common Core. We'll have daily or weekly meetings over Google Meet or Zoom for the students to work remotely with their teachers and peers. And in terms of homework and schoolwork, last year we spent between 2 to 4 hours a day working with Catherine on getting through her schoolwork and homework. And finally, the childcare bit was us working with Catherine around the clock, whether it was for school or just day-to-day stuff. Many parents have been talking about forming pods. This new option I'm offering is what I call Pods Plus. So the Pods option is where you get several families and students together, and they sort of work together and maybe work at one house on a Monday and another house on a Tuesday, and so on. And that's a great idea. But this Pods Plus option looks at how we can use additional money to make this work. So with Pods Plus, we've got a commercial version of the Common Core, so it's still a certified curriculum that works for K through 5. Pods Plus option, though, gives us a teacher that can work with our small number of students in person and online on a day-to-day basis. The key part being with some in-person learning. This is going to allow the students to actually do schoolwork during school and leave us only with a small amount of homework, on the order of an hour a day working with a student for doing real homework, things that they couldn't get done during school, or things that the school wanted them to do with their families. And lastly, the childcare bit is we're going to get some daily professional supervision of our children, and that's great. How do we pull this off? Well, from an economic standpoint, roughly we can look at school districts getting $8,000 per student in tuition annually from the government. And they generally use this. Approximately 50% of that goes towards salaries. There's 20% of that goes to consumables, paper and pencils and things that go away. And the other 30% gets doled out to faculty, to facilities and administration. Pods Plus economics, however, uses a charter school model. So we would actually create a charter school for 1 year. Then the tuition that will be going in, the $8,000 per student per year, would be directed by the pod parents. And we would take somewhere between 50 and 70% of that money and use it on salaries. This is where we get to hire a certified teacher to work with our students. And the remaining 30 or up to 50% is going to go towards purchasing our curriculum, so we've got an approved curriculum, and other administrative fees to make this thing work. The bottom bullet is additional on this slide, because now we're looking at family contribution. How much would I have to pay if I send my student to your Pods Plus? At this point, we're looking at family contribution being optional. We're hoping to run the entire school off the money that's given to us by the state for each student, and then if families would like to contribute any extra contributions that we use, we would all work together to figure out how that would be directed, and we could use that for additional enrichment for our students, whether it's adding topics or locations or field trips or the things that we choose, because once again, this money is all being directed by us, the pod parents. The pros, of course, are so many. I fit these top 6 onto the slide. The biggest one, I think, is in-person learning. Students at my daughter's age, she's a first grader, students at my daughter's age really are going to work a lot better with an adult in the room. We get in-person learning. We've got better socialization now. If we've got 8 kids in a room, they're going to socialize, and that's going to help them much better than looking at a 20-up screen of video tiles and they get to see their friend from across the internet. This is going to lead to better emotional well-being. The students get to see and interact with other people and learn things at an emotional level that really is going to help them. The original version of this came from me trying to figure out how I could get childcare so that my wife and I could work. With Pods Plus, we've got a professional teacher working with them anywhere from 5 to 8 hours a day, depending on how we work this out. That's going to give us childcare. So for our double working families, you've got some time to get things done. This is going to give us, of course, better educational outcomes. Students working with a dedicated adult that's interested in following their learning and able to close the loop with the family and speak with us on a regular basis and let us know how our students are doing, what our students need help with, where we can contribute. Right? And lastly, I sort of alluded to this before, we can add additional content, whether it's adding a separate language that we wanted to teach the students, or music, or programming, or manners and finishing classes, or art, or any sort of things like that. We can set up our own field trips. We could take the students to an outside trip to the Toledo Zoo and things like that that we can do with our pod. The cons, I've been struggling to find them. Hopefully you can help me with this. I'm asking you to help me improve this idea. Tell me what you think. I know that Ann Arbor Public Schools is going to lose the funding for my student if I do this. And I'm very concerned about that because I mentioned we moved into this city and this neighborhood to get the school that we have. So if you're very concerned with Ann Arbor Public Schools losing funding, you can do as my wife and I plan to do, is donate some money back to AAPS, even though our students aren't there this year. We don't want AAPS to go away. We want to go back to AAPS next year. Other questions that I don't know that could be bad things, fill me in. Tell me about it, and I will try to see what we can do. So this is just a rough grid of some rough figures how we might work this for paying teachers. With 10 pod students, I think that's about the bare minimum that we could get with. Gives us $80,000 worth of tuition, about $40,000 to $56,000 that we would be able to spend on salaries. That's a decent salary for a teacher, but it might not get us full 8-hour coverage. So I've got that as one teacher plus some additional parent help. We would still probably have to get some family contribution and time there to make that work. As the numbers go up, we get more and more money. You see at the far end of this chart, with 16 students, we've got $128,000 worth of tuition, which we can take $64,000 to almost $90,000 worth of that money and spend on a teacher salary. And that's going to get us a full-time, dedicated, certified teacher and probably a teacher's assistant. And that's pretty good. If you get up around 20, the numbers are even higher. With $160,000, we could probably afford to pay 2 full certified teachers. And in that case, we've got 2 rooms of size 10, and the classes are really going to work well, and the students can learn a lot, both from their teachers and from each other, and being able to work together. So these are pretty rough figures. All of this is going to have to be drilled down upon, but the answers to how this is going to work is going to be really dependent upon how many students are really going to commit to doing this. Questions that come up often as I've brought this idea up over the last week is, how do we get a teacher? Where do we get the curriculum from? Or how do we come up with a charter school? I happen to have a friend who runs a charter school in town, and I spoke with him about this, and he was excited about the idea, said he'd be glad to help us with it. So he's not trying to make any money off of our charter school, but he does have his charter school that we could be legally a part of, which would then allow us to sort of build our own subgroup in there. He can help us find teachers because he's a charter school. Teachers apply to schools. He can help us purchase curriculum. He said, I've got a number of curriculum options for a K-5 curriculum that you can look at. I have one you probably like, but as the pod parents in charge of this money, he said, I'll be completely transparent with you. You tell me what the head count is. I'll tell you how much money we have available for curriculum, how much money we have available for salaries, and let you make all the decisions. So that's something that we would do as a group, the pod parents. So we wouldn't even have to legally get a charter. There's one that's already in existence for us. So it'd be as simple as doing a small application and all of us being administratively put into a single group, and things would flow directly from there. Where is this school is another good question. The question there is kind of an open question as well. So we could run this like many parents are thinking to do pods, where it's at my house on Monday and your house on Tuesday, and it's down the street on Wednesday, and so on. We could do that, or we could say we've got somebody who's got a really large 3-car garage. We're just going to insulate that and use it through the winter as our main school location. Another option is there's quite a bit of real estate available downtown Ann Arbor, my wife's building, that we don't own, so no money for us. Wife's building has a number of vacancies in there, and we could probably get a place there for very affordable and just say we're going to use this for the school year. And then our students could have a consistent place to go to every day. Families could carpool over there because we'd all be in the same pod, we'd all be in the same bubble. It would work really well that way. That might involve some additional outlay from families. That's a decision we get to make to see if that works. Which grades are being taught? We're thinking of this as a one-room schoolhouse concept. So if there's kindergartners, first graders, and second graders, or first graders, second graders, and third graders, it would work out fairly well. The thing that we're hopeful for is, a minimum of 4 students per grade, because that makes it so that they have at least their own cohort in the work that they're actually working on. They can pair up a couple of different ways throughout the year and swap around. So that's what we're looking for. So we could have, 16 students where it's 4 kindergartners, 5 first graders, and 7 second graders, or however we get people who are willing to commit and try to make this work for our students. What we're not trying to do is make a profit. That's the first thing I want to say here. I'm not trying to walk away with this with any money. We just want better stuff for our students. And we're not trying to go into the charter school business. There's people that already do that for a living. So after this year is over and we have a vaccine and we get to go back in the building, we're going to dissolve this school and go back to Ann Arbor Public Schools. And I'm also not trying to make this a solution for hundreds of students. That's what true charter schools are for. So this is really Pods Plus. So if we've got 20 students, that's probably something we can handle. If we get up to 30 or 40 students, then we might just shard this and say it's 2 separate 15 or 20 person schools that the parents deal with separately. Like I said, we're not trying to be a charter school. We're trying to get this pods thing to work for us for 1 year. Make no money, but get some really good outcomes for our students and families. Next steps, Ann Arbor Public Schools needs a headcount commitment by August 12th. So that's the time you would have to tell AAPS, I'm not sending my student there. We're going to join this Pods Plus. So that's kind of the commitment date for us as well then. I need to know what we've left out, what you still have questions about. Tell me why you would say no to this idea, because that might be something that we can adjust as well. So a good way to talk about this is going to be in person. We can meet at Glacier Highlands Park, August 10th, 10 a.m. Saturday morning. We'll stand around, do some social distancing, shout through masks to be heard, and then work out some ideas, figure out who wants to commit, and figure out what grades we have available, roughly what money we would have available, what people's concept of how we would handle the bubble and how we would handle the location, and all of the little details can start to get discussed at that time. So meet us August 10th. My wife and I will be there. Andrea, you'll see us both. Here's my contact information. Send any questions and suggestions you have to me here. I'm much better at text than I am at email. I'm going to say that up front. That's why the text is there first. Please send them there. I will eventually get to them in email, but you'll find them much faster if you send them to me in text. All right. Thank you for considering this. Please help us help our students.